You'd think we know everything about them by now. Thousands of books written, satellite scans, archaeological surveys going back 2 centuries. The Egyptian pyramids, the most studied structures in human history. Then, in 2017, scientists X-rayed the Great Pyramid from the outside and found a massive hidden void inside, a room the size of a passenger jet that nobody knew existed. For 4,500 years, nobody, not one person. And that's just one of the secrets the pyramid had been keeping in plain sight. Corridors nobody talked about. Doors with handles inside shafts too small for a human body to enter. A full-sized boat buried at the base of the pyramid with no explanation, as if someone expected it to be needed. All of this is official, verified, not fringe theory. A last discovery was made literally last year. So if you think we've figured out the pyramids, this video is going to change your mind.
There's a moment that happens to almost everyone who stands at the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza for the first time. You've seen the photos, watched the documentaries, you figured you were ready. Then you step out of the car, walk across the hot sand, look up, and something in your mind just stops. The first thing that hits you isn't the size. It's the wrongness. The way it sits in that flat desert, as if it was dropped here from somewhere else. It doesn't look built. It looks like it simply is, like the desert grew up around it, not the other way around. And then the numbers start to land. 2.5 million stone blocks, each one weighing between 2 and 30 tons, laid with a precision that modern structural engineers openly admit they couldn't replicate today. No laser levels, no steel, no cranes. The difference between the longest and shortest sides of the base is less than 8 inches. Across a structure 755 feet wide, that's less than the width of your hand. On a construction weighing 6 million tons. The 4 faces are aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of less than 0.15%. Most modern buildings don't achieve that. Most modern buildings don't even try.
And it has been standing for 4,500 years. That last fact contains a strangeness that's easy to miss. Buildings from the 14th century are crumbling. 19th century bridges have been completely rebuilt. Stadiums from the 1970s were demolished before they hit 50. But this, built supposedly without the wheel, without iron tools, without written blueprints, has outlasted every empire that ever tried to claim it. Rome came and went. Alexander the Great stood in its shadow, and according to the accounts that survived him, wept, not from grief, but from the sudden, sharp awareness of his own smallness. Napoleon's soldiers used it for cannon target practice. The pyramid didn't notice. So the question that keeps historians, engineers, and a very large number of people up late at night comes down to one word: how? How did people do this? And more importantly, are we actually sure we know who those people were? In this video, we're going to go through everything we genuinely know about the pyramids. We'll separate hard evidence from educated guesswork, real mysteries from invented ones. We'll look at the people behind this project, the architect who designed it, the workers who built it with their hands, and the pharaoh who may have simply moved into something that was already finished. We'll work through the engineering puzzle that still stumps modern specialists. We'll look at what's been discovered inside these structures in the last 10 years while you and I were busy with our ordinary lives. And we'll sit honestly with the questions that still don't have answers. No aliens, no mystical energy portals, but things that are far stranger and more interesting than any of that. Let's start at the beginning. Actually, let's start at the moment just before the beginning, because that moment is more interesting than most people realize.
We're told Egyptians built them. Fine. But how exactly? The standard story sounds clean. Workers quarried blocks, dragged them across sand, and hauled them up earthen ramps by the tens of thousands, stone by stone, year by year. It sounds reasonable until you do the math. Here's the number that really makes people question that explanation. To haul blocks to full height using a straight ramp, the Egyptians would have had to build a second structure, bigger than the pyramid itself. A ramp at least 1.25 miles long, 65 feet wide, strong enough to support multi-ton blocks, carts, and workers. It would have consumed more resources than the pyramid. And then they would have had to dismantle it without leaving a trace. Imagine trying to build a ramp taller than the pyramid itself just to reach the top, and then tearing it all down when you're done. That's the straight ramp theory. There's a simpler version, a spiral ramp wrapping around the outside. But then workers couldn't reach the outer faces to lay the casing stones. Another approach, levers, rollers, sleds. Researchers tested it. 15 men can move a 2-ton block. Multiply that by 2.5 million blocks. Then factor in the precision. Some casing stones fit so tightly you can't slide a knife blade between them. No iron tools, no written blueprints, no laser levels. Then there's the wild card theory. In the 20th century, chemist Joseph Davidovits proposed that the pyramid blocks weren't carved at all. They were cast in place from a kind of ancient geopolymer concrete, a mix of limestone, water, salt, and other ingredients. Pour it into a mold, let it set. Done. It sounds radical, but not insane. Some blocks show unusual features, air bubbles, layering inconsistent with natural rock. Lab analysis has found anomalous inclusions. But no molds have ever been found. No images of the process exist anywhere in Egyptian art. Not a word about it in any text. Just speculation. One man, though, definitely knew how to get through the pyramid, even if it took him years. In 820 AD, Arab Caliph Abdullah al-Mamun was determined to get inside. No maps, no known entrance, just rumors of priceless treasure. His crew built enormous fires against the outer wall, heated the stone to red hot, then doused it with vinegar. The thermal shock fractured the rock. Inch by inch, they tunneled nearly 90 feet into the pyramid. Inside, they found no gold, no mummies, just empty chambers and silence. That tunnel still exists today. It's how tourists enter the pyramid.
For a long time, the standard answer was slaves. That idea goes back to Herodotus in biblical tradition. But modern archaeology tells a completely different story. In the 1990s, excavations near Giza uncovered the remains of a workers' village. Not crude huts, but a full settlement with bakeries, pottery workshops, and storage facilities. Workers were fed, housed, and given medical care. Skeletal remains show healed fractures, evidence of professional treatment. These were skilled tradespeople, rotating in shifts for a few months at a time. Some were buried near the pyramids themselves, a major honor in ancient Egyptian society. According to Egyptologist Mark Leiner, somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 workers were on site at any given time. Not a slave army, a coordinated state operation. Workers were organized into crews, each with its own name. Graffiti from those crews survives to this day, written directly on the walls of small internal spaces built above the main chamber to distribute the structural load, areas untouched for thousands of years. One inscription reads, "Friends of Khufu." These weren't messages for history. They were just guys writing on the wall, the way soldiers carve their names into barracks. They were proud of what they were building. And honestly, that might be the most human thing the pyramid has ever revealed.
We also have something remarkable, a first-hand account. In 2013, French archaeologist Pierre Tallet discovered a cache of papyri at a Red Sea harbor site called Wadi al-Jarf. They turned out to be the work diary of an official named Merer, dated to around 2560 BC, the exact period when the Great Pyramid was being built, the oldest known logbook in human history. Merer recorded everything: how many blocks were loaded, where they were delivered, how many workers were on shift, what they ate. The menu: beef, poultry, fish, bread, and beer. Every day. The beer wasn't a luxury, it was safer than Nile water. This isn't a hypothesis or a legend, it's the actual logistics of the construction, written by someone who was there. For the first time, we had a written record from someone who was actually there. But who was running the operation? We have a name and a face. Hemiunu, nephew of Pharaoh Khufu, chief architect of the Great Pyramid. His statue survived and is now housed at the Polizeius Museum in Hildesheim, Germany. If you're expecting a chiseled warrior with fire in his eyes, prepare to be surprised. What you get is a stocky, heavy-set, middle-aged man with a sharp, slightly tired face, a bureaucrat, an intellectual, a manager. A man who kept the plans for one of history's greatest structures in his head. That's who built the pyramids, not mythical giants, but flesh and blood engineers. And yet the question won't go away. Why can't we replicate what they did, even with modern heavy equipment? Why can't anyone reproduce a pyramid at scale with the same alignment precision? Did they know something we don't? Are we still underestimating what ancient civilizations were capable of?
There's one thing about the pyramids that even the most determined skeptic can't ignore. Their precision. Not just careful, obsessively, almost obscenely precise. The kind of precision you'd expect from a modern research facility, not from Bronze Age stonecutters with copper chisels and rope. Picture this. You're standing at the base of the Great Pyramid. You're looking at a square with sides roughly 755 feet long, about 2 football fields end to end. Now measure one side, then measure the opposite side. The difference is a few inches. less than the width of your hand. You wouldn't be able to see it. And this was done 4,500 years ago. No laser levels, no GPS, no computers. The sides of the pyramid are also aligned to the cardinal directions more accurately than many medieval European cathedrals built with plumb lines and generations of accumulated expertise. You can write off the perfect angles as obsessive craftsmanship, but the next detail makes that impossible. It proves we don't actually understand what this structure is.
The pyramid doesn't have 4 sides. Not the way your school textbook showed you. The Great Pyramid of Khufu has 8. Each of the 4 faces is very slightly concave, indented inward by just a few inches. You can't see it from the ground. But imagine flying over the desert on the day of the spring equinox. The sun hits at just the right angle. And the shadow splits. Each face breaks into 2 distinct planes. That's exactly what British RAF pilot P.J. Grove saw in 1940, by accident, from a plane. Why builders added this complexity is unknown. It's not mentioned anywhere in any Egyptian text. And we're still not done. Inside, the blocks fit together so tightly you can't slide a razor blade between them. Why that level of precision in a tomb nobody was ever supposed to enter again? Enthusiasts point out that the pyramid's proportions contain pi and the golden ratio, and those numbers do show up when you run the measurements. But even if you throw all of that out, you're still left with a raw fact. The level of precision is hard to explain based on the tools we think they had. An ordinary Egyptian tomb was a small room with clay and mud brick walls. What's standing next to it is something else entirely. Either we're missing something, or this was never just a tomb.
All right. Let's assume the simple answer is correct. It's a tomb. Then explain 3 things that don't fit. First, where are the mummies? Not one of the 3 great pyramids at Giza has ever yielded a body, just empty stone sarcophagi. And there's no evidence of looting. The walls aren't damaged, the ceilings are intact. A tomb that apparently never held a corpse. Second, where are the inscriptions? Every Egyptian tomb of that era is covered in texts and images, prayers, spells, scenes from the afterlife. The walls of the Great Pyramid are completely bare, not a single hieroglyph. The most monumental structure in Egyptian history, and total silence on the walls. Third, Herodotus. He's the one who first wrote down the story that this was Khufu's tomb. But think about it. The guy who gave us the tomb theory visited Egypt 2,000 years after it was built. That's like us writing a history of the Roman Empire based on a game of telephone. Take that for what it's worth.
Now, there are reasonable explanations for each of these. The missing bodies could indicate looting we haven't detected, or burial customs we don't fully understand yet. The bare walls may reflect a specific religious tradition reserved for royalty. And Herodotus, while working 2,000 years after the fact, wasn't operating in total isolation. The official version does have genuine support. Mortuary temples adjacent to the pyramid, ritual reliefs, Ushabti figurines, all of it points toward a funerary function. And according to mainstream dating, the Great Pyramid was built around 2580 BC for Pharaoh Khufu, over roughly 2 decades.
In ancient Egyptian religion, the pharaoh was a living god, the earthly embodiment of Horus. At death, he became Osiris, lord of the dead. His tomb had to match that status, not a vault, but a house of eternity. Those three questions, though, don't go away. And then there's the awkward artifact. A stone slab, basically an ancient billboard known as the inventory stele, found in the 19th century at the base of the pyramid. The text carved into it has Khufu himself describing the pyramid as an existing structure, saying he merely conducted restoration work, not that he built it from scratch. If that's true, the whole official timeline collapses. The pyramid predates Khufu, and we have no idea who actually built it. Egyptologists have declared the stele a late forgery. Most believe it was created centuries after Khufu's reign, during a period when earlier history was being actively rewritten. Its implications were simply too inconvenient. But the authenticity of the physical object itself has never been seriously challenged. If it's a forgery, who made it? What was the motive? The debate is still open.
You'd think that after 5,000 years, every inch of the pyramids has been examined. What could possibly be left to find? Apparently, a lot. And the most stunning discoveries have been made in just the last few years. 2017, muon tomography. Scientists used a technique called muon tomography, essentially a giant X-ray using particles from deep space that pass straight through solid rock, and got a detailed scan of the pyramid's interior. The result? A massive unknown void directly above the Grand Gallery, roughly 100 feet long, about the length of a basketball court. No entrance, no exit, no inscriptions, no sarcophagus, just empty space at the heart of the monument. We don't know what's in there, and that's not a figure of speech. Humanity genuinely doesn't know because there's currently no way to reach it. 2023, a hidden corridor. The ScanPyramids project scores again, a 9-meter passage behind the original entrance to the pyramid, rectangular, clean-cut, roughly 6.5 feet across. This isn't a crack in the rock. Someone made it deliberately. Why? Some researchers think it redistributes structural load. Others believe it leads to another hidden chamber. But the mysteries aren't just inside the pyramid. They're buried all around it. 2024, the Western Cemetery. Using ground-penetrating radar, a Japanese-Egyptian research team detected a strange subsurface structure in the necropolis area near the Giza Plateau, roughly 33 by 49 feet, up to 33 feet deep. An old tomb? A temple? Nobody knows yet. And nearby, back in the 1950s, 2 pits were found beside the pyramid, each containing a disassembled wooden boat made from Lebanese cedar. One was restored and is now on display, nearly 144 feet long. These solar boats were meant to carry the pharaoh into the afterlife. But one of them showed traces of Nile silt. It had actually been in the water. When? Why? All of these finds happened recently, not 100 years ago, now in our lifetime. If we're still discovering corridors and voids nobody knew existed, then what we can see may be only a fraction of what's there. There may be an entire underground complex beneath the Giza Plateau. Everything we thought we knew might just be a rough draft. And here's where every discussion about the pyramids gets dangerous. This is where things start getting speculative. There are a lot of them, and they vary wildly in how well they hold up. We'll look at just 3 worth taking seriously. First, acoustics. Some researchers studying the King's Chamber have noted that the room resonates at around 110 Hertz. The interpretation is controversial, but some neuroscientists have suggested this frequency may shift the brain to a more receptive state, dulling critical thinking and amplifying imagery. The same frequency has reportedly been measured in ancient rock-cut temples in Malta. Whether this was intentional design or coincidence, nobody can say for certain, but it's a measurable finding, not just mysticism. Second, astronomy. The three pyramids of Giza, viewed from above, mirror the layout of the three stars in Orion's belt, the constellation the Egyptians associated with Osiris, god of the dead. Every year, Orion disappeared from the night sky for exactly 70 days, the same amount of time the mummification process took. Then it came back. Coincidence? Possibly. But the internal shafts of the pyramid point at specific stars with a precision that rules out coincidence in the design. This is still a hypothesis, no direct proof exists, but it's built on real astronomical data, not guesswork.
Third, a lost civilization. The most radical theory that serious researchers still entertain, the idea is that the pyramids were built not by the culture we call ancient Egypt, but by predecessors whose knowledge was eventually lost. This explains the sudden leap from simple flat-roofed rectangular tombs called mastabas to the masterpiece of Khufu, and why everything that came after was a decline, not a continuation. Some geologists point to water erosion patterns on the body of the Sphinx. If they're right, the Sphinx isn't 4,500 years old, it's closer to 10,000. Not proven, not disproven. There's also the alien theory. It's become a meme, fairly enough. But honestly, when 4,000 years later we still can't confidently answer either how or why, is it really surprising that some people look beyond Earth for answers? All of these theories share the same root cause. The pyramids don't fit the explanation we've been given.
The pyramids didn't appear out of nowhere, but their emergence isn't a story of smooth, steady progress. It's a story of failures, fear, and one extraordinary breakthrough. It starts with Imhotep, priest, architect, physician, astronomer. Around 2650 BC, he designed the first stepped pyramid for Pharaoh Djoser at Saqqara. 6 terraced levels, a tower reaching toward the sky. Imhotep is the first person in history whose name has survived as the name of an architect. Not a king, not a general, a builder. His name is carved into Djoser's statue alongside the royal name. 1,000 years later, Egyptians deified him as a god of wisdom and healing. The Greeks identified him with Asclepius, their god of medicine. The man who invented the pyramid became a god. What followed was a string of failures. The Egyptians tried to build smooth-sided pyramids and kept running into problems. At Medum, the casing collapsed. The structure couldn't support its own weight. At Dashur, something even more revealing happened. Partway up, the builders suddenly changed the angle of the slope, making it shallower. Why? The ground was settling, where the architects got scared it was going to collapse. These weren't gods. They made mistakes, second-guessed themselves, improvised as they went. The bent pyramid still stands today, a monument to engineering anxiety.
And then, suddenly, Khufu. Sneferu's son takes everything that came before, every failure, every lesson, and builds something nobody has ever matched. Where did that leap come from? We don't know.
But here's what we do know. After the 4th dynasty, it all goes downhill fast. Pyramids get smaller, weaker, fall apart faster. Which raises the obvious question, why is the very first one a masterpiece and everything that followed looks like a budget knockoff? If this was a gradual human learning curve, that's not how learning curves work.
We're living through something remarkable. We now have robots exploring shafts that haven't been accessed in thousands of years. Lasers scan the pyramids layer by layer. Muons pass straight through massive stone walls. That's how in 2017 we found the enormous void above the Grand Gallery, confirmed simultaneously by 3 independent research groups and published in Nature. Satellites measure stellar alignments. Ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging reveal what the naked eye never could. And the work isn't stopping. Right now, researchers have several things in their queue that should make your jaw drop. Radar data shows a rectangular structure beneath the Sphinx's paw, possibly a chamber or a tunnel. Nobody's gotten there yet. The ScanPyramids team is still working on the hidden corridor found in 2023. They believe it leads to another room. And a Japanese-Egyptian team is preparing to drill at the anomaly site discovered near the Giza Western Cemetery in 2024. We found voids, hidden corridors, traces of technology that shouldn't exist for that era. And still, no definitive answer. We're standing in front of an enormous ancient book, reading it blind, page by page, not knowing whether it's an instruction manual, a prayer, a message, or just the noise of an age we can't fully hear. Thousands of years, millions of tons of stone, engineering that still doesn't have a clean explanation. We don't know exactly how it was built, and after 4,500 years of study, we're still finding rooms and corridors nobody knew existed. We started with a question: how do you even believe any of this is real? Maybe it gets easier when you stop thinking about the pyramids as monuments to gods and start thinking about them as the work of people. Ordinary people with names, logbooks, and graffiti on the walls. People who failed, adjusted, and tried again. The pyramids don't have all the answers, but they do have one. When humans truly commit to something, the results can last forever.